Welcome to Tea Time. I'm your host, Shimite Obialo, contributor for Black Enterprise, partner at Passbook Ventures, and founder of the Suites Business Community, where we help chief executives and entrepreneurs of color to scale their businesses by getting folks access to the right connections, coaching, and capital resources. I'm here today with Sherrell Dorsey, founder and CEO of The Plug, a digital news and insights platform covering the Black innovation economy. Her work has been featured in Vice, The Washington Post, Seattle Times, The Information, and more. Sherrell has been a contributing writer for notable publications like the Columbia Journalism Review, Fast Company, Black Enterprise, and others. In 2018, she was named an Inspiring Woman in Tech by CNET. Welcome, Sherrell, to Tea Time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Amazing. So, gotta ask, we're on the show. What kind of tea are we drinking today? Or what kind of tea do you like to drink?
So typically I am a green tea, especially in the morning. I really love a good sencha or a jasmine green tea if I want something a little lighter. In the evening, I love to drink rose petal tea or something very soft like chamomile. Those are probably my top favorites. And then during the winter, especially when there's germs in the air, lots of ginger and turmeric tea.
Ooh, you gave us all the
The
levels.
levels. It depends on how you know.
Rose petal. I love green tea. You get a little so you get that caffeine kick.
Yep.
And then the rose petal is just herbal tea, I'm assuming.
Yes, a really, really good herbal tea. It's great for women, hormone balance, all of those kinds of things, stress relief. So, as you can tell, I am a definite tea drinker. But yeah, excited to be spilling tea with you today.
Let's spill the tea. You started The Plug back in 2016. Now you have thousands of folks on your mailing list. You have hundreds of paying subscribers. And I saw the news that recently The Plug is inside of the Bloomberg terminal. So you folks who are subscribers to Bloomberg can access your exclusive content there. Take us back into how you got started. I'm sure many folks see the success of The Plug. You're all over the internet, on social media, but help us understand how it is that you got started with this news platform.
Absolutely. I will say very transparently that The Plug was kind of an experiment and something I did not initially intend to become this sort of entity in and of itself. I'm from Seattle originally, and that's relevant to the story because, of course, the tech and data girl is from Seattle. I grew up learning how to code, learning about network administration as part of a program I was in Seattle, specifically created and designed to teach kids in the inner city about technology. And that led me into internships at Microsoft in high school. And as I got into the workforce post college and worked for different startups like Uber, as well as a contractor for Google Fiber, one of the pervasive things I saw, particularly in media, was just this kind of thought leadership around the future of business and the future of tech through the lens of white guys who were always considered geniuses. And I felt that intellectually, the journalism was very lazy when we talked about the rigorous nature of understanding where technology was shaping us, shaping our communities, shaping the economy, and what was being built. And so one of my first publications I ever published professionally in was Black Enterprise. So it's a very full circle moment to be on the show with you today. I got to write about some of the green jobs as Lisa P. Jackson, who's now at Apple running sustainability, was leading the EPA at the time. I got to talk about different initiatives specifically related to tech and entrepreneurship, and was able to leverage that opportunity into writing for other publications like The Root, as well as Fast Company and some other publications like Triple Pundit, which hyper focus on sustainability. And at some point, honestly, Shimite, is that I wanted to kind of have my own publication that hyper focused on this new age of entrepreneurship, which centered invisible things, right? Like tech entrepreneurship, which centered things like robots, and this kind of future of in terms of cities, in terms of the way that we work, and the way that we learn, and the way that we operate our communities. And that's really what the plug was birthed into. I had been going to conferences. I had been living across the country between Seattle, LA, New York City, Bridgeport, Connecticut, Charlotte, North Carolina, Atlanta. I'm currently based in Miami, and really meeting these incredible innovators and ecosystem leaders, helping to build up this idea of access to Black capital, or access to capital for Black entrepreneurs, spaces to help people grow their companies from that pre-seed to seed to Series A stage. And I wanted to really approach it in the way that a rigorous kind of news publication would do so. And in the plug again, I kind of started with this like newsletter, this $10 domain name, and an email list, and I just started kind of going for broke and talking about what I was learning, who I was seeing, and eventually decided I want to do some hardcore original reporting. I want to take kind of the data lessons I'm learning within work, and cultivate data sets that will be useful to the industry. And that's how the plug was born.
Wow. That is a very fulsome background. One of the things I was reading, you had a Forbes piece that published earlier this year, and you mentioned, you touched on this concept of being intellectually lazy. Um, you talk about in the Forbes piece how when Black and brown folks are in the media, are talked about, it's always through the lens of trauma and disparities. There is something very deficient about that. How have you seen, your focus on bringing that sort of expertise within the Black and brown founder community amongst Black and brown executives? How have you seen that really, change the narrative when placed in relation to, some of the more intellectually lazy depictions of folks like us, quite frankly?
Yeah. And I say that because as much as I think media covered the lack of diversity within the tech industry, was that the only kind of questions that were being asked were more so about what is it like to be a woman? What is it like to be a woman of color? What is it like to be a Black person? It was this very like magical minority. Like there were no other conversations that we could have with living, breathing entrepreneurs who had not just overcome some of the barriers of maybe race, gender, sexuality, location, but that they were actually building a significant business that mattered a great deal and was on trend with where the future was going. And so, just the fact that we are kind of always tapped individuals, the same individuals, the Elon Musk, the Travis Kalanick's, the Bill Gates, the Mark Zuckerbergs, those names were plentiful throughout media. But when you started to look at folks like Aisha Evans, you didn't hear about her name within the autonomous vehicle space. And yet she led Zoosk into $1 billion exit. You didn't really hear about the Jewel Burks, and yet she sold her company to Amazon. And you didn't really hear these conversations happening in a sense of thought leadership or expertise. And so for me, it was really about why is it that Black people only have the option to comment on being Black, right? And we wanted to pull the focus that our publication, yes, it is about Black innovation, but we're not asking Black innovators about what they're doing because they're Black. We're asking them because we know that this has been a subset of people who have not been heard in a standpoint of understanding what their business strategy is and how that's leading them through the future. So, for instance, when COVID hit and a lot of companies were starting to shut down,
it's tough to be looked at and seen without that lens of race. But when you create a space where you remove race from the equation because everyone is Black, somehow, some way, the conversation can now get down to, something else. So now we're talking about the actual substance of what you're building. and the incredible technical expertise that we see. And I think that, we're going to see more and more of this moving beyond that initial layer of representation, which is, hey, I need a DEI expert essentially to come and layer in, as opposed to, I just need an expert. So definitely what you said certainly resonates.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just being able to get down to the nuts and bolts of your work is critical. I don't think that changes just because you're an entrepreneur. I think we face that in the workplace every day where everyone wants you to kind of speak on behalf of your race. And sometimes you just want to be able to come to work and do your work at the end of the day. And I think that it's interesting because obviously we are on a platform that specifically has spoken to Black executives and Black business owners. And I think just having to carve out these spaces for ourselves, safe spaces to have conversations about business, to share knowledge, to share resources, even technical assistance, are always going to be mission critical. And I'm glad that we do have these spaces because they exist and they continue to exist because clearly there is a gap. There's something that we're not being reached with. And even when we have to vacillate between all of the spaces in society in which we inhabit, we still are seeing those disparities of not being fully served or fully added or fully, welcomed into every single space and realizing that there is a disconnect. And so, I think that for the work of the plug, our goal is to do great work first, ask interesting questions, do as much as possible to sort of be ahead of finding the trend. And at the end of the day, being diligent reporters, and doing really good journalism. I think for us, we also had to take a step back. And the reason why for us it was interesting not to kind of go the route of constant publishing, constant like kind of copy paste press releases, and to slow down the news and information and journalism and really focus on more long form data analysis, data visualization, was to have people really sit and ruminate on the smartness of the work and to really consider the leadership of the work and to ask real questions and do real reporting and really revert back to that, because we kind of had gotten into this phase, I think, as a society where so much information, right, information overload like all the time, and we weren't really sitting with what people were creating. We loved, for entertainment purposes, the visibility, but we needed to take a step back and figure out, well, what did this really mean? I remember when Dawn Dixon Apakane had raised her first round of funding via crowdsource. And it was such an exciting time to kind of see this Black woman really provide an opportunity for other people to invest within her hardware company. She has intelligent vending machines. And one of the questions that we asked that others kind of skipped over was, what does this mean for Black people who were investing for the first time? And they decided to make an investment into this Black woman's tech company. And we were able to access the data set of where these investors lived. So we were able to pull together an actual data analysis and a what we call a bubble map, to kind of look regionally at where investors were coming from. We did an analysis of what the average investor actually invested in, and that was about $250, I believe. And we were able to speak with folks who were like a chef at a restaurant who said he and his family, I think his father, pulled together some money in order to make an investment. And, they were hoping that this is something that they could give to their kids, and teaching them how to make an investment. And I thought that was a very significant part of the story that we missed because we were so hyper focused on this narrative of, oh, let's like hyper focus on like all the Black women that have raised over $1 million.
We had Lauren Washington on the show. She's a co-founded Black Women Talk Tech. Now she's got Funder, and we had a conversation about essentially getting into angel investing and what that looks like. Her platform is focused on removing bias from angel investing, but that is a great angle, which is the movement that has started and that really underpins many of the crowdfunding campaigns, like what Dawn put together for PopCom. So I get what you're saying. And now you touched on this, but you have a subscription model as opposed to advertising, which the vast majority of Black media publications pursue the advertising business model. We interviewed Roland Martin, and he talked about, essentially who's going to pay those subscription rates. It's mostly folks working at larger corporations, and so there just isn't a big enough base to support a subscription model. And so, Roland Martin and Filter, like so many publications, prioritize selling ads. Talk to me about your decision to go that route. How's it going for you? Do you feel like it's sustainable? Are you bringing enough revenue to support that model?
Yeah, love Roland, for sure. We had an interesting conversation in the DMs last year on a speaker payment. So always love like him dropping gems and jewels, particularly when it comes to business. And obviously, Roland is such a force and has built up a pretty significant following across the board. But I will also say I vehemently disagree, primarily because it's something that is definitely hard. But I found the sustainability of advertising to be very fickle, primarily because we know that the vast majority of ad revenue has gone to some of the top social media companies. When we look at Facebook, Google, and the like, they've really sucked out the middle of what traditional newsrooms had in terms of resources when it came to advertising. And I felt that continuing to chase this carrot mattered so much less than cultivating an audience that wants to purchase and become part of what you're building. And I think it's the same way when we look at investment, right? You're making an investment into a company because you believe in its mission, you believe in the products or the services that it produces. And I felt that based on the audience we had cultivated and the professionals that became part of our growing newsletter, that our work was more than just information for information's sake and this idea to go viral and likes and clicks and things like that. It was about the utility of the value of what we provided and the usage in which these subscribers can actually take back our data sets, they can take our reporting and make critical decisions within their sphere of influence. Now, again, this was all experimental. But we have had several hundred subscribers. We have had entire teams from various companies sign up. We have had entrepreneurs sign up and investors sign up to get access to some of the services we provide as part of our what we call our pro membership. So that's a different kind of level. When I look at why we kind of went that route. And we do advertising as well. Like, do not get me wrong. We are always working with incredible brands and companies that are really trying to reach our audience and be very thoughtful about their offers to our audience. And that does make up a significant portion of our revenue. But for the subscription side, we also wanted to change the conversation of how we invest in Black research and Black data and Black reporting as well. When we look at even just the disparity in ad revenue compared to our mainstream, also known as white counterparts, when it comes to ad revenue, we're also on the bottom. And so for me, it was kind of a very countercultural practice to say, listen, I can't compete on that level. I'd have to move extremely fast and hire very quickly in order to kind of chase this ever increasing like clicks and page views, which to me were very vanity metric centric and less of a true metric of engagement. And so every time someone clicks into our work and decides to pay our annual fee, that lets me know that you are fully bought in, both literally and figuratively. And so is it for every single platform? Absolutely not. But just with the trends of paid subscriptions and paid research, we're seeing that growth. It's still a very hard business to make that transition for sure. But we're also seeing folks like Bloomberg, New York Times, The Information, have these like incredible success stories of turning that revenue into something significant, in addition to having, advertising revenue as well. So I like the idea of having a hybrid approach and not saying no to getting people to buy into what you're building. When I think about the dollars we get from our members, you know, those are dollars that we use to pay other journalists. We have 4 Black journalists on our team who hail from us from the Forbes, who hail from us from the CNNs, and Georgia Public Broadcasting. We have freelancers that we're able to pay, and I think that people understand that ratio of the work that they're supporting. And it also just allows us to have the freedom of experimentation and also a hyper focus on how do we produce greater quality over and over and over again.
Mm. Great answer. Uh, of course, you have, like you mentioned, the information. You mentioned New York Times. There's also Quartz. There are many publications that focus on, that quality over quantity, that substance over sizzle. And so I think you're onto something. Reminded of the recent scandal with Carlos Watson and Aussie Media and chasing the clicks and what that sort of, almost desperation for showing those certain metrics can lead to. I believe you chose not to follow the path of venture capital, right? Are you venture backed, or did you
So we do.
go for?
Yeah. So we actually did get a little bit of funding from an angel investment standpoint on a pre-seed level. And, the option is always open to take on some greater VC dollars. But again, I wanted to be very thoughtful about how we were building this company because, I was like in grad school building out the plug during a time where everyone just went and raised a bunch of money and kind of like blew things up and then walked away with their tail between their legs. And I mean, totally could have done that, could probably still do that. There's not a day that goes by that I don't get someone reaching out about potentially being an investor in the plug. And it's not that I don't see the utility in these resources to grow. I wanted to be thoughtful about how I wanted to grow before I would have someone else within my business telling us where we should go and what our North Star should be and kind of chasing whatever vision of success there is. Now, I don't know if that makes me a foolish CEO or a brilliant CEO. I knew that for me, what I wanted to build was not about attention media. For me, it was about how do we really create something that has meaning, has intention, has a high caliber of a body of work, and really gets people to grapple with and challenge their idea of what the Black story looks like, right? I mean, early on, we started to get reporters subscribing. We have so many reporters and other media outlets that subscribe to us who are finding sources for the first time that are not like white guys, that are finding like university professors out of HBCUs or what have you. And so for me, like the significance and the impact of that, of helping to lead business professionals to do their work in more thoughtful and inclusive ways, for me, like that's part of the goal. I remember reading the Business of Bloomberg and also looking at the way in which he was able to filter bond and stock information and create an entire program based on the kind of information that financial analysts need every day to do their work, and then spinning out that kind of data profile into a media company. And I saw that as like, wow, this is such a really novel idea, that you give people the utility that they need to do better work, and then you attach to it the storytelling component, and you become a formidable force because you are trusted, you have a sense of credibility, and you don't have folks talking about you behind behind your back about like how your cat videos and your memes are just distraction attention. I also say, I'm not really a cool kid. I am truly a nerd. I think just by nature, the way that I've built my company fits my desired lifestyle and personality. And, I think running a media company is just a tremendous feat. It is a hard business overall, and it's supposed to be hard. it is a lot because the technology is always changing, and I didn't want to get into this world of racing against a clock. I wanted us to run our own race. I wanted to find the most talented Black journalists and let them do their work, let them really kill it and be high quality journalists in a world where we have issues with disinformation. We don't have people who are actually digging into data and confirming facts, right? We're taking everything at face value. We see the shortage of journalists not returning to the industry, and I think we have to really look at who we're becoming in this race to kind of be on top or whatever that looks like. So that's me on my journalistic soapbox. You can probably tell, like, I'm very passionate about that. But building
Yeah.
the business end of it allows us to be very, very thoughtful, and we don't necessarily have to compete for numbers. At the end of the day, our work continues to sell itself, and wrapping around not just an event or a series of 50 articles per day, but around that kind of one slow, thoughtful component that people talk about for months, that have lended itself to greater opportunities and advertisers and partnerships with top tier publications, that have taken our work and said, we want to try to do this again the following year. Like, can you help give us guidance on this? So I'm proud of that. And again, you might ask me the same question 6 months from now, and we may be in a different place. But I think it's moved at the pace that it's needed to move at. And I often have to stay out of my own way and listen to my team as well in order to kind of continue to carry us to the next levels.
Yeah. Well, very inspiring, and we're all rooting for you, for the plug. I am certainly taking notes for the suites and how we think about our growth strategy. What you said about essentially just not chasing to keep up with the Joneses. Everyone is looking at, oh, how can I build this next $1 billion company? And I think there is a certain, there's a certain intentionality that in which you're building the plug that many of us can and should take note of. So thank you for sharing. Your soapbox is appreciated. Guys, this has been Shimite with Tea Time. I'm here with Sherrell Dorsey of The Plug, and we'll see you next time.